Hey, Darren, welcome to the Leaders Lab. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Darren, as I stated in the introduction, a lot of people have heard your name, and it's been associated with some of the biggest athletes and celebrities of our time. I mean, going back to Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and Hulk Hogan, and I mean, the list goes on and on. But along the way, you had a different part of that story, and I'd love for you to maybe talk to us about your upbringing. I think I live, I didn't share this with you before we clicked live, but I think I live within maybe 40 minutes or something of where you're from. I just moved outside of New York City to a town called Nyack, and I
Oh
know
yeah,
you're
I know
from
Nyack,
Jersey.
New York. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about growing up near here and what was life like back then?
When I think back to it, I tell people you would have thought from the outset I was a perfectly normal kid, and I had a great mother and father, and supportive family, and a sister. Um, that was one of my best friends growing up, but I just never fit in. I never really felt comfortable from probably the time I was 8 or 9 years old, and I used to attribute that to being put in small classrooms and feeling learning disabled and being called that, and seeing my friends in 30, 40, 50 kids in a class, and I was always walked off into a room with 5 or 6 people. And even when I got to the bigger classrooms, we were isolated. We were known as the kids in the back of the room. And you don't think it does much to you at that age, but it does, because it basically deflates your ego and makes you feel less than, and doesn't make you feel a part of. And I think ultimately that's what led me down the path where, when I experimented unintentionally with drugs for the first time, I found the answer and the solution to all that.
Tell us about that. Like, what was that first experience? What happened?
In sleepaway camp, I was 14, up in Massachusetts, and had severe stomach pains one night. I think a lot of it was homesickness. And the counselor took me to see the nurse, and it was this green liquid in a clear cough syrup cup. And it just tasted horrible. I remember gagging. It was like a really nasty type of cough syrup taste. But within 2, 3 minutes walking across the softball field, um, I just felt like I got introduced to the world. And by the time I got back to the bunk, that green liquid introduced the world to me. And everybody else got to know who I was trying to be at that point, because now I was extroverted, talkative, funny. I felt popular, just as smart as everybody else. I flirted with the girls at the bunk next door at 14 something. I was never able to talk to women. And, I did this for 3 straight weeks, every night complaining to the nurse. It was a different time in 1984, until my mom and dad came up visitation day and found that I was taking liquid Demerol. And so that was the end of that.
But
And
you had like a little mini addiction by the end of summer camp, yeah?
oh yeah, 100%, hundred
Wow.
percent. Yep. And I don't think it was in my system enough at that point to be like craving and fiending for it. But a couple months later, I speak all over the world. I would say that 1 in 3 kids now, especially in this country, that go to a dentist appointment and get prescribed opiates, become addicts. And I was one of the three. School started. I wound up getting my wisdom teeth removed, and the dentist gave my mom these white pills. I didn't know what they were, but man, within a half hour after taking one for the pain, I felt like I was on that Demerol again. And there was only 6 in the bottle. So the next morning when I went downstairs and saw there was 2 left, I did the same thing I did to the counselor. I conned and lied and grabbed my cheek and put on crocodile tears and told my mom my teeth is killing me. I got a horrible infection. And that's a loving mother who wants to see their child suffer. She took him back to the dentist, and he wrote a prescription for another 6 of those pills, was for extra strength Vicodin, another opiate.
Wow. So I mean, but the pills run out and you're a teenager. How do you get more pills at that
So,
stage?
so
What
now the
happens?
pills ran out. Weed became popular, wine coolers, fake ID to get booze, and started realizing that a lot of my friends' parents had these Percocets and Vicodins in their medicine cabinet. Now, the difference with me was I started a baseball card business at that time. So I was actually a little bit dangerous because I was making money. So when you're a 14-year-old kid and your boy's offering you $50 to take 10 of those pills out of the cabinet, I was able to get more or less anything I needed. Somebody's father was getting hundreds a month for, severe pain, chronic pain. I did whatever I had to do to get whatever I needed. I just thought it was fun. I mean, it made me smarter, it made me wittier, it made my business ideas come to fruition more, made me more successful, more creative when I was laying out all my advertisements for the national trade papers. This is truly, what I believed. Then I would justify it to my dad and say, "Hey, Walt Disney created Disney World tripping on LSD," because he would catch me smoking weed in the garage and whatever it was. They didn't know the extent of the pills, and this went on for about 5 or 6 years. It kind of all came to a head when I was 21. I was arrested 4 times in 6 months, and at that point, I still didn't think I had a problem. I just thought I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the judge put me in an outpatient program called the Alliance in St. Barnabas in Livingston. And right before I completed it, I didn't even have to go the whole year. I went maybe 11 months or in change. And I got the good news from the counselor at the program that I was done. The judge basically agreed to discharge the matter, the case, just stay on the right path. And literally that night, my best thinking told me to call my friend Dave and say, "Hey, let's go to the city and celebrate." And we took a handful of Xanax. We did these mind eraser shots at a place called Jimmy's Cafe in the Village. And after 3 or 4 of those, I don't remember anything except waking up in the hospital. Dave fell asleep behind the wheel on Highway 280. His car went into the ditch and my face went into the windshield. I have 90 stitches. I still have the scars to prove it right here.
Wow,
And
yeah.
underneath my chin and my hands, concussion, broken nose. My lip was cut in half. First 2 people I say, the night that I got out of the program, my mom and dad with tears running down their face because, I know it now. I didn't know it then. The disease of addiction, alcoholism, and substance abuse destroys everybody else around you. It's not just the people suffering. And they didn't know how to help me. They, knew that something was happening that was very bad. And you have a kid that's making hundreds of thousands of dollars now at the age of 21 years old. I had the resources to get whatever I really needed to get. And I eventually made a transition from the baseball card business to autograph signings to my agency, Prince Marketing Group. And I thought I got smart because I was like, all right, I have morality clauses. Magic Johnson was my first client, still is to this day. He's one of my closest friends in the world. We spoke for 45 minutes 2 days ago. And okay, I got to get smart. I've got sciatic. I've got physical ailments from working out, a lot of the stress. Every doctor, to me, it was like a candy shop because nobody was saying no to me. They all knew my accolades as an agent. They saw me well put together. The opiate epidemic never existed. Only a handful of states had triplicates. For the most part, you can bring a prescription right to the pharmacy, handwritten on a prescription pad. And I just had endless supplies of Vicodins, Percocets, and Oxycontins, whatever I needed. And I got to be careful when I speak at high schools, especially because it did work. For 4 or 5 years, I was, a rock star, just building up the foundation of the company that I have today. People don't realize what went into cultivating, building, nurturing these relationships, my Rolodex of some of the most iconic figures of all time. And, eventually it just turned on me.
Yeah, I think
Anybody
so
in
many.
recovery,
Yeah, I
anyone in
hear you,
recovery
dude.
knows, it's gonna catch up.
Yeah, like it works till it doesn't, right? It's like the shy kid who starts smoking weed and it serves a purpose, or having a drink because it gives you liquid courage at a party or whatever. And yeah, that's wild. But I'm curious. So when your parents, when you wake up from that accident, you're looking at your parents. Was the thought in your head at that time? How can I? I guess what was the thought in your head? Were you kind of scheming around like how can I kind of keep this train on the tracks and keep doing what I want to do? Or was there any thought at that point of like I need to stop?
Oh, no, there was no thought. I wanted to get out of the hospital and get high.
Yeah.
I was in pain. I was uncomfortable. I needed to know about plastic surgery and what the heck's going to happen here. This is ridiculous. And thank God, it wasn't anything worse than facial lacerations and stitches. But no, there was absolutely zero thought whatsoever. In fact, after the first few nights when they had me stay at their house, and I mean, I literally looked like Frankenstein with the stitches in my face. It was so bad. I couldn't wait for them to leave because I had a bag of weed sitting in the garage. So I can like just really chill. And it's just scary when you're high and you're, excuse my French, fucked up like that. And I go in the mirror and I look at myself and you're tripping out like, oh my God. But thank God it wasn't, any plastic surgery that was needed. Even the technology back then, I was able to, get out and, did I learn from it? No, I didn't learn from it back then. I was 21 years old. I thought, what
Learn
the
when you're
heck? I
ready.
mean, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. Like, how does this freaking happen? Now I get out of this program. I wanted to get my life back, have fun, live life and party. And now can't even go out looking like this for the next 2 months.
It's crazy how it's. I had somebody in recovery ask me one time. He said, "What's the craziest thing that ever happened to you? While you were fucked up?" And I'd say, "Well, I rolled this car, or I did this, or And he'd say, "What else?" And I'd rattle off like 5 stories. And he said, "I think you missed the biggest one." I'm like, "What was it?" And he's like, "That you kept drinking after doing all of that shit. That's the craziest story." And I'm like,
Yep.
"Yeah, that's a really good
Yep.
point."
Well, I mean, I didn't even learn. What year was it? 16 years later. Year before I'm trying to recover. I was 37 in Vegas at the NBA All-Star game, and had a big event for a client of ours that we sold a TV show to Mark Cuban's HDNet, and landed with a terrible case of bronchitis. The doctor came to the room, gave me a prescription for antibiotic, Vicodins for the pounding cough, and Tussin X cough syrup, which was my favorite, an opiate-based cough syrup. And I went right to the pharmacy that afternoon to fill it, called my then wife, told her to order me 3 vodka, Red Bull, and cranberries. I'm getting ready to go out. And I got back to the room, drank half the cough syrup, chopped up 3, 4 Vicodins. I snorted them and finished 2 or 3 of the vodka, Red Bull, and cranberries. And within 10 minutes, I'm on the ground. I mean, foaming out of the mouth. My heart's palpitating. It feels like it's going to explode out of my chest. I'm sweating. I've got the chills. She freaked out, obviously called the they had an oxygen mask on my face, EKG machines, needles in both my arms. And here I am, 37 years old. The only thing I can think of is, thank God, don't take me. I'm too young to die. I won't do this again. I won't do this again. And never made it out that night. But when I woke up at probably 2, 3 in the morning to look at myself in the mirror, I thought I was having somewhat of a sensible talk, saying, what the heck is wrong with you? How could you do this? I chopped up 3 more Vicodins and I finished the second half of the bottle of Tussinex, and I went back into bed because how could I was referring to mixing vodka, Red Bull, and cranberry with the other stuff. And that following week I had some sense of accountability. I called an addiction psychiatrist and he put me on Suboxone for the first time in my life.
And what was different about that time? I mean, I guess it was just because it was life or death, and were you finally scared a little bit?
I think I was scared. I think it was more fear at that point. Like, how could
Yeah.
I let it get to this point? I think I could still party and drink and take some other things, but there's definitely some issue going on with these opiates here. So I wanted to find a softer, easier way, but to still party and find a balance at the same time. So I lied to him for over a year. I was sniffing Ambien at night. I knew if I snorted those at 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I would get that euphoria and I would just work like a machine. I had like hyper focus on Prince Marketing Group opportunities. And on days that I just had jitters, it was, Xanax and Valium. I was also on antidepressants, a mood stabilizer, drinking a couple days a week. I lived in that hell for about a year.
When does it all come crashing down for you? When does the rubber hit the road?
It came crashing down before my awakening happened, which I'd like to think was July 1st, 2008. My uncle and his then girlfriend, Andrea, my uncle who passed away, was in recovery for years, a couple of years ago. They were visiting my mom in New Jersey. and they paid me a surprise visit. And I never met this woman before in my life. And she came into my condo and said, "Am I okay?" And for whatever reason, I felt like these crazy tractor beams with her. There was this very odd, unusual connection. And I told her exactly what was going on. The first time in my life, a
Like you
complete
told her about
stranger.
lying to the psychiatrist. You told her about
Yeah,
snorting stuff at night, and a perfect stranger, and you just felt some
complete
connection.
stranger that I just felt something different
Wow.
with. And my uncle knew what was going on because he was me. I was like a younger version of him. And he didn't know in depth, but would never judge me. He was in recovery himself. And she's like, "Do you realize you're an addict? Your life's unmanageable?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Do you realize you're powerless and you have a disease?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Most importantly," she starts pointing to all the pictures on the wall, celebrities. And she goes, "Do you realize that this doesn't matter? Any of this, it doesn't mean anything because you don't mean anything to yourself. That the disease of addiction does not discriminate whether you're from Park Avenue or a park bench or you've been to Yale or jail. It'll take you 6 feet under." And that just broke my soul. And I actually broke down and started crying. And she's like, "It's okay." She goes, "You want to do anything it takes because I can help you." I just celebrated 5 years sober. And she pulled out a 5-year coin out of her pocket and said to me, "If you're willing to do anything it takes, I can help you. But this has to come first and foremost, more than anything in your life." And I said, "Let's do it." And we went on a detox plan for the next 36 hours. And that next night was July 2nd, 2008. I was in New York City at the Caroline building with my then wife. And I came back from the gym, and man, those detox feelings, I was losing my mind. I called them up. I said, "I can't freaking do this. I'm calling the goddamn doctor. I'm getting what I really need to get. I'm never going to make it." And my uncle just grabbed the phone and said, "It's the goddamn disease talking. You got to kick the crap out of that damn ego of yours already. It's this immature, childish behavior. You got so much healing to do. It's ridiculous. Go to a 12-step meeting, put your hands up and tell these people you're sick and suffering and you need help." And he goes, "God damn it, mean it this time." And I said, "I can't freaking do it." And I hung up the phone. And I ran into the bathroom and I locked the bathroom door because I was looking for some non-narcotic anxiety pills that she allowed me to take during the detox because she knows it's worked for other people that she helped get sober. And out came 2 extra cent Vicodin out of one of the bottles, which me and my ex Simone, we cleaned out every medicine cabinet. I have no idea how they got there. And it seemed like the biggest relief. But then for whatever reason, I fell on my knees, man. I've never done it since to this degree. Never did it before. And I screamed out to God, "Take the money, take the business, take the notoriety. If you give me a single day of freedom and take me out of hell, I will spend one day at a time the rest of my life taking other people out with me." And it was a lightning bolt. I had a white light moment. I had a burning sensation on my right shoulder, and I truly heard a voice say, "I've got you and ready." And I stood up, and it wasn't me. And I flushed the pills and wound up on a computer finding a 12-step meeting in the upper 80s in a church basement in New York City. And there was no taxis then. So I jumped in a cab on this gorgeous summer night of July 2nd, looking up at the sky, saying, "Oh my God, for the first time in my life, I wanted to stay sober more than I wanted to get high." And the minute I walked into the church basement, there was 200 people, all once of a hopeless, broken state of mind, all soulless, that slowly but surely put the pieces of their life back together. And the leader said, "Is anybody new coming back, sick or suffering?" And with no shame, this hand went right up. And I said, "I'm Darren. I'm an addict, substance abuser, alcoholic. I need help. I've got the greatest life in the world. I've had multiple overdoses in the past few years. I'm not going to make it. I just don't know what to do." And that big shotism, that ego, the so-called super agent meant nothing at this point. And I started hearing people share things in that room during that hour that identification-wise blew me away. I heard myself, my thought process, my deranged way of thinking, the character defects, the acting out, the instant gratification, the disease of more in almost every single person. And literally within 10 minutes of me introducing myself, I had a dozen spiritual brothers and sisters, man. They came over to me and they were hugging me. I didn't even know them. And they said so many incredible things like, "Stick with the winners. just keep coming. Don't worry about if you get the fellowship, because if you keep showing up, the fellowship is going to get you. Put this first before anything in your life, because you're going to lose it if you put anything else before it. And then the one that just blew me away was this woman and this man grabbed me up by the shoulders, and they stared me in the eyes and they said, "Don't worry about loving yourself. We're going to love you until you're strong enough to get there."
That's really cool. I've never heard that before. What do you think was different about how you saw the people in that room? Because it sounds like you had been in a room before, like in a 12-step room before, and I had too. So I'm kind of curious, compare notes. But you didn't see them that way the first time you went in there, or the
No,
first few
multiple
times.
times. No,
Yeah. So how did you see them before, and what was different now?
I had the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
I never had it before. I was at the jumping off point. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I remember double checking that my life insurance policy was in check and my state was in check. And, those last few months, I didn't want to wake up in the morning. I was praying that I wouldn't wake up in the morning, because that's how dark it got. And I know it's hard for a lot of people that know me to hear that, but it's the truth. And, the gig was up, the double life was up, the looking for the outside fix for what was really an inside job was up. And I knew that, this is my last chance. And the identification, like I said, finally listening, being present, wanting to be there, having that willingness, that one time changed my life forever.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Magic Johnson or Hulk Hogan or Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier or Ric Flair or Charlie Sheen, any Chevy Chase, these incredible individuals and humans that I get the blessing of calling my friend and working for. It was these degenerate drunks and alcoholics and addicts that slowly showed me one day at a time how to put the pieces of my life back together and how to be accountable and not blame my mother, my uncle, my family. I was the one that put everything in my system. I was the one that had to put something into my system to fit in, into a world I never fit into. And unfortunately, it's 100 times worse than it was back then. Most people I know either are suffering or know somebody suffering in their life. And there's always some sort of, reason as to why everybody does something. So after a day became a week became a month became a year, and I met my sponsor about 30 days in. Calls me up one day and he goes, "Look, you've been doing great. You're doing step work. You're making amends. You're at meetings every day. It feels good, right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, let me tell you something. You want to keep this gift, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it's time you start giving it away to other people, because you got no shot at keeping this thing until you start helping others." And that's when I realized what recovery was about.
That's amazing. I remember going in at the beginning, and I think this is maybe the curse of I think you and I shared that we were able to keep our lives externally, keep our lives together, right? Like keep performing for your clients, keep the money coming in for the business, keep you didn't lose the house. You didn't, I mean, you nearly
High
killed
bottom.
yourself, but yeah, exactly. And I think
I
for
lost
the,
that. But here again, like I told my dear friend Jen Cohn the other day, that has the Big Habits and Hustle podcast. She was at dinner and she was crying with me over somebody my foundation just scholarship last Friday that actually reached out to me on Instagram. I said, "Jen, here's the difference. Sometimes it's that much harder as a high bottom, because you lose the sense of self. And how do you identify that you've lost the sense of self? Only I can do that.
right.
The bottoms, you have prison, you have no other choice, you're homeless. I was at the top and had to make that decision for me, because
Right.
most people around me didn't fully understand that there was that big of a problem, because those who aren't educated and have experienced it look at it as a bad base going through a rough time. Just, maybe send them to another doctor, check them out. Like, there's
Yep.
got to be an easy fix. No, this wasn't an easy fix. This was a double life.
Well, and I think for all of us, Darren, I think our impression when we're not in that world is, an alcoholic is, or a drug addict addict is this, right? Is somebody that loses their job, is somebody that ends up in prison, is somebody that, right? And so it's like, well, what the fuck? I mean, maybe he parties a little bit too much, but Jesus Christ, it's Darren, right? I mean, he reps
Yeah.
Magic Johnson. He's got like all, you know, all this other. Can't you just fix it? Can't you just go to a doctor and like kind of fix it? Can't you taper off? And I think that thought is the slow killer, because we start to believe that shit too. That how can I just continue to kind of kick the can down the road and manage this addiction a little bit longer? But the other question I had for you, so you embrace recovery. I can tell, I mean, you embraced it full on. It sounds like once you were ready to do it, you had not really had a proper emotional thought in a way for probably, I don't know, 30 years or something at that point, since you were 14 years old, right? Like you stopped processing like your anxiety. You stopped processing your fear because you could medicate your way out of it. So, because I'm speaking for myself now, right? I did the same thing. I started drinking and smoking weed and stuff at 14 and didn't deal with a lot of stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm a man in my 50s going, oh, there's a lot of repressed shit here. So how did you deal with, I guess, yourself, your feelings, your emotions, and all of that in early recovery? Was that just kind of because you didn't have your medicine anymore, right? Like you didn't get to snort pills every time things got uncomfortable. So what
Yeah.
did you turn to?
Well, the one thing, again, I was telling my friend Jen this the other night, that I did a lot of praying that once these chemicals got out of my system, and God bless people that still suffer from depression, real mental health, bipolar, we're not doctors in the rooms of recovery. And I said, if I can go a few months and eventually see a little progress each day and know that I was really never depressed, I was numbing. So I don't need antidepressants or bipolar or anything like that. I think I got a shot. And little by little, I mean, look, there were tough days with withdrawal, detox pains. I learned to go to the gym more. I learned to eat healthier, do whatever I had to do, massages, spa treatments, everything and anything to distract the way that I was feeling, immerse myself into work. Because I think it took me about 4 months until I was ready to go out. And my then wife, we went out with my dear friend Robert Belkier and his wife Lorraine, who I've known since I was 6. I went out to my first sober dinner as an adult. And when I went to the recovery meeting the next day, the joy and the tears of joy of something so simple for somebody like me to go and be able to look at people drinking, having a good time, enjoying the food, enjoying the environment, the conversations, being present, being in the moment, knowing that slowly this external with an internal transformation is happening, that I can suit up and show up for life and do these things that are so simple to most people that were never simple to me. And it was one there. I hit my first wedding at one point in recovery. I did my first, keynote travel with Magic Johnson without my nerves rattling and dealing with the event coordinator and security at the private jet station, all the things in my business, traveling with Smoke and Joe, whatever it might have been. And there were these little wins of knowing I could do this and eventually doing the step work, being of service, suiting up, showing up, being accountable. I eventually got to my place where I have a therapist I wrote about in my book, Aiming High, that was very near and dear to the family. She knew me since I was 8, and she passed before I got sober. But she used to tell me, I only wish one day that you could understand what beauty and love is like on the inside, sweetie. Because I know your family and I could see some dysfunction. I understand the thought process. But the day that you can walk into a room and not have to be with Joe Frazier or Muhammad Ali or Magic Johnson and know that you arrived, that you're somebody that's earned the respect. You didn't buy your way in. She goes, that's the day that I'm going to have the biggest smile cheering for you. That's who I am today.
Yeah,
That's who I am today.
so
I
cool.
know that I don't need Chevy Chase is going to be here in an hour. He's been a dear friend for 30 years. It's my job. It's my career. I spoke to Charlie Sheen for 45 minutes this morning. He's doing fantastic. And, 99% of the conversations are about life. I can do all the things that I thought I needed, almost like a trophy on my arm. The biggest stars in the world. I could do it by myself. And most of that, to be honest with you, man, never came from my accolades as an agent. It came from this God-given gift of recovery and being so transparent and vulnerable, and sharing my message with the world. And from doing esteemable acts, I developed that self-esteem that I never had in my life.
It's crazy because when I think to going back to you being, 13, 14 years old and getting into business for yourself. And I mean, I got to think that all of that was, you talked about not feeling like, feeling like you didn't fit in, always feeling like you're, back of the bus kind of guy. And then it's like, here's this way to be seen, right? To be important, to have significance, although even that didn't really work, right? Like there still need to be drugs. But one thing that I found like extremely like touching about this whole process was, or your life, was the investment, not monetary investment, but the time investment and the caring investment that Magic Johnson made to you early in your career, but also sticking with you and even writing the forward to your book that's all about recovery. Like I mean, I'm sure at certain points when you were at your lowest, you were like, well, shit, if this blows up, I'm going to lose everything, right? I'm going to lose these relationships. Magic's going to hate me, like whatever. And it seems like those relationships are better than they've ever been. And I just thought that was really cool. And I read the foreword that he wrote in your book, and it was amazing.
It's incredible. I mean, like I said, 45 minutes on the call with Charlie, and he didn't know the only, thank God. I didn't know the old him, thank God, because he's coming up on 6
that
years
would have been a party.
And I mean, the call ends every single time with, I love you, bro. Hulk Hogan, every single call, I love you. Magic, yesterday, I went on my balcony to speak to him about some business, and 99% of the call was life. And I go, love you, boy. I'll see you next week. We have a big keynote event in Tampa for my boy, Vic Tipnis. It's unbelievable. Ric Flair. I mean, everybody, Carmen Electra, Jerry West. It's, and some of them didn't know me back then, but they see the way I live my life. They see how dedicated I am to this mission. That it's everything to me. Jeannie Buss, Lakers co-owners, a dear friend. I was at the elimination game, sitting center court. I bought a good friend of mine that was a big star on American Idol this year. I don't need to bring the stars anymore. It's right. Kind of like, Magic said it in my own way. God created a path for me to be a celebrated, recognized person in the world of mental health and recovery. Not for my ego, for the sole purpose of being selfish to take it for me so I could be selfless and give it to the world. And it's an incredible feeling. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable amazing that God set up for me this platform to, be blessed to work with some of the most iconic figures of all time, to then develop relationships with, some of the biggest media outlets, whoever it might be. And, people like Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty and all these guys that have the platforms. And you found me because of Aiming High, and and we're going to help save a life or two, or maybe more, when your audience watches this. And the greatest feeling in the world. Yeah, I could sit here and talk for an hour about business, but everybody that's, near my level or above it, has had trials and tribulations. I'm like Jay Shetty. What's your purpose? On purpose. That's the name of his podcast. What is your purpose through all this? Because once you're gone, you can't take the money with you. It's about your legacy and the amount of lives that you impacted along the way.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you've dedicated your life now to helping others has just been amazing. I know you've set up your own 501c3. That you're also are you on the board for the Banyan Centers? What's your affiliation
Banyan Treatment Centers?
Yeah, Banyan
advisory board. Yeah.
Very cool. And what else can people find you doing these days? We're going to put all your information in the show notes, but how can our audience best reach out to you, Darren? And I know you're speaking at schools. You're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at agent_DP. Facebook is Darren Prince. The Prince Marketing Group, like just like it sounds, is our business website, princemarketinggroup.com. Official Darren Prince is my personal website page. And then anybody that, could be generous enough, I don't care if it's $20, whatever, it all adds up for the Aiming High Foundation. highfoundation.org. I literally have a story that'll blow you away, and my girls heard it the other day, and I've told a handful of people. A gentleman messaged me on my public page a comment that needed help Friday night. And when I reached out for him, and I reached out to him, no insurance, was about to lose his 2 kids, and said he needs treatment. And I made one phone call over to my friends, Brian and Robert at Oaks Recovery in South Carolina. We haven't done much fundraising lately. And I have a dear friend, Bruce, that passed away with about 30 years sober. I met him in New Jersey in the rooms, and he moved to Florida and passed a couple of years ago. He used to have an expression, GMCs, God Managed Coincidences. I was in Tampa last week to see Hulk Hogan. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I went to a 12-step meeting every day at the Serenity Club. Friday night, I did a Zoom meeting. I hung up, had dinner. This message comes in. There was only about $3,800 that's been sitting in the Aiming High account. $3,823, the Aiming High Foundation account, because I'm meant to start doing some speaking again the next couple of months. I take all those proceeds and put it into that fund and donate 100% of it. They basically say that we can scholarship the guy. I didn't even throw out a number. We can discount it for you because you've done so much donating to us and helping people. $3,800 was the number they came up with.
Amazing.
There's now $23 sitting in the account, and it's just, these moments have happened to me before, and it's because I was dialed in. I was dialed in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, did that meeting Friday night, and I don't go and still go to meetings and do those because I have a fear of picking up or relapsing anymore. I want to be a better spiritual person.
Sure.
It's like I say in every podcast, I want to say what I mean what I say, and not say it mean. I want to understand people instead of me being understood. I want to, in the heat of an argument, I'm not perfect. I'm way better than I've ever been. I'd rather feel all right than right, because I don't want to have an emotional hangover. And all 3 of those things go for anybody listening that don't have substance abuse problems or alcoholism. Life's too short, and you put yourself into that bad energy space, and your text, your email, your mouth lashes out. You are not going to have a good day of manifestation. I can guarantee you that.
Absolutely. And I think I heard you on another podcast, and I couldn't have agreed more. It might have been on Jay Shetty's, but he was talking about, and you guys were kind of vibing out of that. Most people have addictive behavior, right? Maybe it doesn't manifest itself into, taking a bunch of pills every day, or, drinking yourself to death or whatever, but it's shopping. It's, electronics. It's all this stuff. It's all this stuff that takes us out of being this higher version of ourselves.
Out of self. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And being connected,
And my dad, may rest in peace, who was my closest friend in the world, he used to tell me when he saw things I was doing, like, God damn it, why can't you just love yourself enough? I don't understand. Like, love myself. I love the way I feel. I'm like, it makes me smarter and like helps my business. Like, until I got sober, and by the grace of God, he had a sober son for 8.5 years.
Oh, cool.
He he got to see the best version. And to go through that loss, my uncle, Smoking Joe Frazier, Ali, and to shoot and show up to all their memorials and funerals and be present, and never feeling so uncomfortable during time in recovery, but feeling so comfortable at the same time. Where even the average human has to take something or have some drinks or an anxiety pill when you lose a father or a loved one like that. It was such smooth sailing because I created such a foundation for myself. My sponsor, Steve, I call him my spiritual big brother, always taught me, that when life is bad, get yourself to meetings, stay connected. When life is good, run your ass to meetings and stay connected, because there's going to be a time where it's like a bank and you're going to have to go in and do a withdrawal. And if you don't have that foundation, you're going to want to break back out there.
You talked about earlier when I was asking you what was different the second time about accepting the people, like in the meeting versus the first time. And for me, I know the first time I went to a meeting, all I could see were the differences between other people and me, right? Like, oh, those guys just got off the rehab bus. They're in, they're rock bottom. They're in a ditch. I'm not like that. I'm running a business. I probably overcorrected. I don't even really need to be here, right? And that's all ego talking, obviously.
Yep.
But
Yep.
and so I got what I, was asking for, which was a half-assed recovery at the beginning. It was very hard. It was very conflicted, right? Like I couldn't really hang out with the drinkers, but I couldn't really hang out with the sober people either because I hadn't accepted that, and I hadn't had any kind of spiritual awakening. And it wasn't until you get to that point, and I think people get freaked out by the term spiritual awakening if you're not religious, but it just means, man, that there's something bigger than you out there and that you're going to need help. And that to me, it's like a surrender, right? It's the surrender that I cannot do this by myself.
It's some sort of being that's greater than ourselves. You don't need to
Right.
believe in God or
Right.
whatever it be. There was always that moment for every single one of us in life. It could have been a car turning the wrong way and you could have been in the accident. It could have been an airplane. You hear
Yeah.
stories about people missing a flight in the airplane crash. I mean, these situations happen. There's something that is there. And I believe when you live a life of spirituality and a life of service, most importantly, I think you start seeing all these things manifest around you where these moments pop up. And that, again, that's got nothing to do for people struggling with drugs and alcohol. I just think it's in general, anyone that I've met that lives that positive mindset, understanding it reveals her character. Knowing that me personally, I don't learn anything when life is great. It's the grind and the struggle. As miserable and angry I might be or resentful, I have to learn to channel those emotions and do different things and understand most likely I still put myself in those situations by not staying on top of certain things or getting a little complacent with something. And I have to look at me. And so what can I do differently next time so this doesn't happen again to avoid it?
That was so well said. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, man. And I appreciate you coming on here. It's really good to meet you. Love your story. Love the fact that you tell it so authentically because, I'm sure there's been a lot of other powerful people in sports and entertainment that have suffered from the same stuff that just, and bless them if they've gotten sober. But, by sharing it, you're helping others. And I think that's just amazing.
100%. I said I've a debt to gratitude. Debt of gratitude. I'm somebody every single day that wakes up at the front of the customer service line looking to return this gift.
Nice. I love it. I love it, Darren. Thank you so much. I appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right, sir. Take care.
Take care.